Nigeria Stock Exchange today played host to a conference on sovereign green bonds, which served as a strategic engagement between the federal government and financial market players on the prospect of investing in sustainable development in Nigeria. It was an opportunity for the government to engage the capital market stakeholders and private sector leaders ahead of the planned sovereign green bond issuance by Nigeria in the first quarter of the year. In her opening remarks, the Minister for Environment, Mrs. Amina Mohammed, said the Green Bond Summit was the environment sector's contribution to Nigeria's economic diversification plan.
The Green Bonds process is an attempt by the environment sector to contribute to this administration's efforts to diversify the economy, create jobs, improve security, and provide a framework for sustainable development that delivers on the Paris Agreement. Under the Paris Agreement, developed countries reaffirmed their commitment to mobilize $100 billion of resources by 2020, and this was to support developing countries. It is to enhance the implementation of our policies, strategies, regulations, and action plans, and most importantly, the climate actions with respect to both mitigation and adaptation. This objective will remain in place till 2025, and will act as a floor from which flows shall increase beyond 2025. The government's new proposed economic recovery and growth plan identifies the green bonds as one of the alternative sources of financing. The plan also has significant overlaps with our NDCs on objectives for power, transport, and agriculture. It attracts climate resources to these interventions, expanding funding that will be available for our economy. For instance, in the power sector, it includes our aim and ambition to have 13,000 megawatts of off-grid power, solar power, in our projects. In transport, implementing schemes that reduce the incidence of vehicles by introducing and encouraging the use of energy-efficient buses. All these are meant to help us achieve a target of 450 million tons of emission reductions. Our green bond process is identifying projects within various sector strategies that have incidental contributions to emission reductions. Improving partnership with government and the private sector will keep the momentum of the green bonds process. It provides opportunities for the private sector to be in the process of connecting the three strands of sustainable development: economic, social, and environment. That will then give us the longer-term sustainable development.
Acting President Professor Yemi Osibajo, in his keynote, described the Green Bond Summit as an alliance between environment and finance.
We are witnessing an alliance between finance and the environment. Two worlds which even a few years ago one couldn't imagine would speak the same language. A buzzword in this new language is environment finance. And environment finance is the other name for this rare win-win scenario. An opportunity to deepen our capital market and to make a dent in combating poverty and inequality. So this program will improve access to power to 37 federal universities and 7 university teaching hospitals across the country. It will also impact the residents of surrounding communities, a total of about 1,110,000 people. In total, 119 megawatts of power will be provided in this scheme, out of which 60 megawatts will be solar-powered projects. The Ministry of Environment has also developed an afforestation program which will benefit from this bond. The aim is to increase forest coverage through the planting of seedlings to cover 131,000 hectares of land. This will not only reduce emissions but create hundreds of jobs. With the issuance of this green bond, we set a benchmark for ourselves and the wider market and begin to aggregate resources around elements of our economy that seek additional funding. Issuing green bonds are also a tool to support the shift to non-oil-based assets and attract private capital to finance these assets at a challenging time for our economy. Doing this as a sovereign gives us the opportunity to lay strong foundations that serve broader markets to bonds issuance and a pipeline of projects to states. It's important to note the transparent nature of the green bond process. The hurdles to scale are not very different from the typical steps in developing and implementing federal projects. However, this requires a little more scrutiny and ties resources to results. This is in line with our commitment to good governance, as this is a key to sustainability and investor confidence. This initial issuance will set the tone for subsequent bonds that will not all be issued, we hope, by the federal government. Being the first to be listed on the stock exchange, no index exists yet, but this issuance will develop it and hopefully then attract serious private sector players to issue larger bonds. Clearly, it is the private sector's involvement that will sustain the green bond revolution, especially by mobilizing and aggregating around our key economic goals.
The acting president, Professor Yemi Osibanjo, CEO of the Nigeria Stock Exchange, Mr. Oscar Onyema, key ministers, and a notable financial analyst, Mr. Lufemi Awoyemi, CEO of Proshare, speak on the prospect of the green bonds and expected impact on the Nigerian economy.
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that here is a new opportunity, in some senses diversifying the possibilities for investment, and but more importantly, we are looking at investment opportunities that usually have been ignored, especially low carbon infrastructure, solar powered infrastructure, and several other low carbon infrastructure. I think that this presents an opportunity. All the eligible projects for green bonds are essentially low carbon type projects, low carbon type infrastructure, which usually doesn't get funded, but now we have a great opportunity to do so.
I must say that we're very excited about the progress that has been made since we made the initial proposal to the Honorable Minister of the Environment, that we need to really think about financing some of the green initiatives and some of the general initiatives that are being done by the government in such a way that it takes into consideration sustainability and the environment. She moved that proposal forward, and there's been a lot of work in the background to establish the enabling framework that will allow us to have the first sovereign issuance. And that issuance, once it's done, would also open the window for subnationals and corporates to begin to issue green bonds based on the green principles.
Nigeria is just one huge opportunity for the green bond market. If you look at global practices in terms of investment flows, you'll find that there's a huge investment fund available on green projects. And if you look at the way Nigeria has to go in terms of its power, in terms of environmental issues, in terms of agreements which is a signatory to, including the climate change, it offers huge opportunity to develop alternative power solutions, especially for those in the hinterlands. It's a very, very huge opportunity for both parties, especially the investors in the bond and for the bond issue and for the government itself. And what you should therefore look for is beyond the sovereign green bond, you should be seeing some other private sector initiated green bonds as well. And like you had inside, you could also have a green sukuk that deals deliberately on everything. And what do you mean by green? Eco-friendly, environmental friendly, but more important than that, it also ties into the socio-economic system. Like you had a minister for environment talking about that. And just putting up lights in certain streets can basically help the site and services scheme. But it can do much more than that. It can actually lift people away from just feeling as if they are living in slums to living in better areas where major power grids cannot get to. And if you look at some of the initiatives that have been going on in East Africa, to think that Nigeria is the first place where such a fund will be launched, it begins to tell you that the investment appetite for Nigeria is returning.
You see, this is the first sovereign bond in the whole of this continent. So I expect that they're planning to enter the market very conservatively and see what the appetite is, and from there ramp up. And if you look at the history of government going into capital market over the last 1 plus 1.5 decades, the entry thresholds have been very, very modest, but they have grown severally.
So how realistic is the 30% energy mix?
Oh, it's extremely realistic. I mean, it's based on extensive consultation, it's based on our current realities, and it's based on what we expect is realistically achievable. So it's very, very realistic. And these things are not unconnected from our realities also. One of our realities is that we've signed the Paris Agreement, and the Paris Agreement has thresholds and nationally determined contributions that we have made as a country that we will achieve in terms of reducing greenhouse gases, greenhouse emissions, and so on. So these things don't stand in silos. They are all connected. So the commitment to do 30-30-30 is part of the vehicle for achieving our NDCs.
I think there was amazing commitment from many others who also prove that they're interested in an alternative, in creative and innovative instruments that will bring in the environment so that you're not thinking of it as corporate social responsibility, but a business opportunity that creates jobs and creates profits.
The acting president described this as the alliance between environment and finance. So it's environmental finance as the buzzword now. What is your feedback from investors based on this first summit, which is very critical and it's like a pace setter?
I think they're cautiously optimistic. They like the way the process is going, the integrity and the transparency of it. They're attracted to some of the possible investments, and so they can see that there is an alignment to the concerns that they have. So what I think we're getting from them now is that we fine-tune more, a little bit of the structure, but also the criteria, so that people know that when we certify this green, it is a green bond that will stand the test of time.
As the countdown to the formal sovereign green bond issuance of about 20 billion naira begins at the end of the first quarter of 2017, a major takeaway from the Green Bond Summit is the proactive steps taken by the Nigeria Stock Exchange in serving as a platform for effecting a strategic investment vehicle for sustainable development in Nigeria. It also shows the focus of the present administration in partnering with the private sector to adopt transparency and innovative financing to the green economy that will create jobs, support infrastructure, and overall transform the Nigerian socio-economic landscape.